I was cleaning my room earlier, and as I was doing so, I was moving books around, from shelf to shelf or dresser to dresser. And I was looking at all of them. There were a lot of history books that I had read over the years. And I was thinking, which one should I talk about? Which one should I give a spotlight? Which one should I recommend to you guys? And while I was doing so, I came across an older book that I read actually for my very first and second history class I ever took in school. And when I was thinking about it, I reread some of it. I read the back and everything. I skimmed through the rest of it, just because I really liked it. And it's probably one of my favorite history books that I've ever read. And then on second thought, I realized that I think genuinely every American should read this book. I think it's short. It's about 100 pages without the appendix, which gives more supporting documents. It's short. It's succinct. It has a very clear historiography. Its message is crystal clear. He states it multiple times right out in front in the beginning. And I think it's a very important book that needs to be read. And the book I'm talking about is Apostles of Disunion by Charles Dew. And before I get into it, let me just read the back for you. Get your feet wet a little with what it's actually talking about. Charles Dew's Apostles of Disunion has established itself as a modern classic and an indispensable account of the Southern states' secession from the Union. Addressing topics still hotly debated among historians and the public at large more than a century after the Civil War, the book offers a compelling and clearly substantiated argument that slavery and race were at the heart of our great national crisis. So what does that mean? Basically, when you're talking about the historiography of the Civil War, there's two main debates, and people know this. It's going to be slavery and there's going to be states' rights, to the point to where the citizenship test accepts both of those answers as the main cause of the United States Civil War. What this book does is push to the forefront the argument that slavery is the direct cause. I personally have believed that for years. I believe that since APUSH in 11th grade. I feel like it's pretty crystal clear. Obviously, states' rights was an issue that was faced, but it definitely was not the main issue, specifically in 1850s, 1860s. But this book provides a different level of analysis. Because let me read the subtitle. The subtitle tells you what sources it's drawing upon to make that conclusion that makes it stand out compared to other literature that discusses slavery and states' rights. It is Apostles of Disunion, Southern Secession Commissioners, and the Causes of the Civil War. So right there in the subtitle, it tells you exactly what kind of documents this book is analyzing. It's analyzing the speeches and other written material by Southern Secession Commissioners. What does that mean, though? How does that impact our argument here? Well, when you talk about the discourse from the Confederacy on why they seceded, a lot of the top-down information talks about secession as a states' rights movement, even if you ignore, damning speeches like the Cornerstone speech, which that one is about as pro-slavery as you can get, especially from a vice president of the Confederacy. But if you look past that, a lot of the leadership of the Confederacy says that states' rights was the main reason. And this is using a different source. It's using Southern Secession Commissioners to say that no, the main viewpoint of the Confederacy, specifically the leadership, the hierarchy in the Confederacy, was that slavery was the main reason. But before we get into that, what is a secession commissioner? Basically, if you don't know, secession was split into two kind of eras, like it's arbitrarily, but it was secession winter in 1860 and secession spring in 1861. Secession winter was caused directly after the election of Abraham Lincoln, and that was hotbed slavery states that knew they wanted to get out for a while, basically, and they were looking for the excuse. Abraham Lincoln got elected, they were like, boom, that's it, we're gone. And that includes South Carolina and Alabama. Those are the two states mainly discussed here. And then there's secession spring, which is other states that were undecided or just a little bit slower to react, a little bit taking more time to see, like, what is Abraham Lincoln going to do? What are the Republicans going to do in office? How would they affect slavery type of thing? And so they would secede during the actual spring of 1861. But so what is a secession commissioner? Basically, these are people that are hired by the earlier seceded states. Again, so we're talking South Carolina, Alabama, those states. And they are sent to other states in the South, specifically, that have not officially seceded yet, and trying to convince the public that they are going to, or that they should secede. But why does that matter? How does their input change the historiography of the Civil War in any way? because of the language they used. Again, as I discussed, the Confederacy, the leadership was very much this is a states' rights issue. And that was them trying to basically drum up good press for the 1860s, saying that we're doing this for states' rights. It's, the United States is oppressive, whatever. Secession commissioners' main jobs were to go into states and discuss the reasons for secession to the general public, to the legislature, try to convince them why voting for secession was the right thing to do. And how did they do that? This book analyzes a lot of different commissioner speeches to the public, to different forums, and they all have one thing in common. They all mention slavery as the number one reason, bar none. Some of them do mention states' rights, and Charles Dew mentions that. He acknowledges that states' rights is mentioned, and he will highlight when it is mentioned. But bar none, the number one reason all these secession commissioners are there is they're pitching to the common Southern man and to the people who are voting on secession that if you do not secede, you will lose your slaves. In the Confederacy, we will not take away slaves. We will keep slavery alive forever. You will not lose your slaves in the Confederacy. Join the Confederacy. And then they start talking about states' rights as well. Like, you'll also have more states' rights. And so through this 100 pages, again, very short book, very short, it basically it's literally just taking excerpts from the secession speeches and putting it there and then be like, this commissioner said slavery is good. He was talking to these people. It's a very short, it's a very simple book that basically just shows that even within the Confederacy, not even within the Confederacy, but within the Confederacy, they weren't fooling anybody. They weren't even fooling themselves. They believed slavery was the main issue. And their main kind of allure to the other states that haven't seceded, specifically like Virginia and Georgia, who are both very on the fence about this, was slavery. It was that we are guaranteeing slavery will not go away, come to the Confederacy. Stuff like that. And I think it's a very interesting book. It's a very short read. It's a very simple read. He explains all his thoughts very succinctly. He uses and cites the commissioner's speeches word for word when possible. He also cites the Cornerstone speech, which, because of course, obviously, that's a big evidence that it's about slavery. But it's only 100 pages. It has genuinely 5 chapters. Slavery, states' rights, and secession commissioners. The first wave, the South Carolinians, the Alabamans, and then the mission to Virginia, as well as a conclusion, and then an appendix, which has all of the secession speeches that he cites in full. So you can read them for yourself, you can glean them over, or you can look them over, kind of see what you can glean from it, see if you glean the same thing that he did, which was about slavery. I'm going to keep this video short. It's only 100 pages. I can talk about it for 100 minutes, maybe. But I think the best thing you can do is just read this book. I think every person in America should read this book to talk about slavery. If you think it's the Civil War, because if you think it's a slavery issue, this will reinforce your argument and you will sound better and you will know more what you're talking about. If you think it's a states' rights issue, I think this will, at the very least, if it won't change your mind, it'll at least show you the other side. It'll show you that slavery was much more of a motivator in the South than you might think if you support the states' rights argument. So once again, I think all Americans should read this book, Apostles of Disunion by Charles Dew. It's a very good book. It's cheap, and it is well written, and the arguments are well presented. The historiography is very clear. This is a little short, but thank you all so much for watching.